Hello, damsels and knights, and welcome to the pilot episode of The Late History Show. The first late show where we learn about history by interviewing the ones who made it. With this show, we hope to bring new ways to talk about history here on YouTube. I'm your host, Sam Godwin, and I think it's time to bring in the first ever guest of the show. A big applause for Charlemagne.
Hello to everyone, it's a pleasure and an honor to be the first ever guest of the show.
Thanks to you for accepting the invitation. First of all, how are you?
Very good, I just finished a game of chess with Otto von Bismarck in the afterlife.
Ah, cool. Before we start, how should I call you? Carl? Charles? Carolus?
You can call me Carl.
Okay, Carl, what do you think about introducing yourself to our audience? Just a few words so people can have a context about you and your story.
Well, I did a lot of things during my life, let's do a quick summary. I was the ruler of the Frankish kingdom from 768 until my death in 814, expanding it through a lot of wars and conquests. I spread Christianity across Europe and oversaw an important cultural revival, called the Carolingian Renaissance. Oh, and in the meantime I casually became emperor of the Romans.
Thanks. So what do you think about the fact that people study your life after all the centuries after your death? And how do you feel about being a very important figure in European history?
For me, the fact that people are still studying my life and my people. It's surreal. It's an honor and an award for my achievements. I mean, I knew that the things I did will shape the future, but so much was unexpected.
Now, I want you to talk about this image. Roll the screen. Pepin the Short, aka your father. I think he is underrated by the general public, due to the fact that he's overshadowed by his famous father, Karl Martel, and you, his even more famous son. But he did some important things during his life that deserve more recognition. Would you talk about it?
Sure, my father did some important things that people should remember. First of all, he is the founder of the Carolingian dynasty. In the year 751 he overthrew the last Merovingian king, with the support of the Pope and most of nobles, becoming the first Frankish king of the Carolingian dynasty. During his reign, he made some legislative and ecclesiastical reforms, reconquered the region of Septimania from those Muslims infidels, thanks to the victorious siege of Narbonne in 759. Oh, and he laid the legal basis for the birth of the Papal States, with the donation of Pepin. He was very important for my future success and the strength of our kingdom.
Now, it's time to dive in your story and let's connect with your father's death. We are in the year 768 and you become king of the Franks, but just a part of it, right?
Yes, my father before he died, as the Frankish tradition wanted, divided the kingdom between me and my younger and less known brother, Charlemagne, as you can see from the image. If you are asking why you never heard of him, it's because he died of illness in December 771, leaving his part of the kingdom to me.
Moving on. We are in the year 772. You are the sole ruler of the Franks. You start immediately by conquering the kingdom of the Lombards.
Yeah, that was a good campaign, fast and without any significant losses. Pope Hadrian I asked me insistently for military help against the Lombards. So, in 773 I put the capital of the Lombard kingdom, Pavia, under siege. Less than a year later, the city surrendered, the last Lombard king, Desiderius, was sent in a monastery, and all the kingdom was mine. The Pope, with my agreement, obtained the control of many territories in central Italy, continuing the formation of the Papal States. Oh, and a little fun fact, one of the daughters of Desiderius, was my second wife.
Second wife? Wait, how many wives did you had?
I had in total 5 wives. In order: Imiltrud, Desiderata, Hildegard, Fastrada and Liutgard.
It's time to talk about the bloody war with the Saxons.
Those damn Saxons. It took me more than 20 long years to finally conquer and convert them to the real faith, Christianity. They constantly revolted and refused to convert.
Well, Carl, what do you expected? You forced them to convert to Christianity and deported thousands of them away from their homes and killed many as well. I mean, you went very hard on them. Like that time at Verdun?
We don't need to talk about that.
Oh yeah, we need. Especially since the general public doesn't know anything about what happened that day. We are in the year 782. A Frankish army was decimated by a surprise attack by the Saxon rebels. Among the dead, some of your close collaborators. You opted for a revenge with no mercy. You intercepted that Saxon army, captured nearly all of them, and ordered the decapitation of all them. 4,500 people killed in one day. This was the so-called Massacre of Verdun. I understand revenge, but don't you think you went too far?
Listen, beside the fact that the number are a little exaggerated, I admit that I went a little too far. I was driven by rage and I wanted to give a clear message to all the remaining rebels. I did what I thought was the right way. I mean, in the past, we want hard when it comes to revenge and conversion.
Well, I didn't expect it and apologize, but this is better than nothing. Ironically, you hoped to finish the revolt, which instead lasted until the year 804. But now enough with wars and executions. Let's talk about something more calm. The Carolingian Renaissance.
Yeah, the cultural rebirth is definitely an important aspect of my rulership that people should remember. During my reign, I oversaw a cultural revival in art, literature, law and architecture, called in honor of my family, the Carolingian Renaissance. I wanted to help the spread and understanding of legislative and religious texts, so my scholars created a new style of writing, easier to read and write. The so-called Carolingian minuscule. I promoted education among the clergy, the spread of books and the revival of the Roman traditions and law. Culture and education are an important key for a successful state.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now, before we talk about that time you casually became Emperor of the Romans, it's time for some questions for our audience. Carolingian Simp 88 asks, what the story behind the elephant at your court?
He was a gift. In the last years of the 8th century, I exchanged some embassies with the ruler of the Abbasid Caliphate, the powerful Harun al-Rashid. Beside making diplomatic agreements, we also exchanged some gifts. Abu el-Abbas, this was the name of the elephant, was one of these gifts. People were amazed when they saw him. Another cool gift was an automatic water clock made of brass.
People always forget that in the period we call wrongly the Dark Ages, the Middle East was living his golden age. Let's remain in topic with the question from Timp the Norseman 99, who asks, what do you think about the mythization of the Battle of Tours? But before you answer, let's give a little context. You see, the Battle of Tours was fought in 732, between the Frankish army led by your grandpa, Karl Martel, and a Muslim army. The Franks won, and this victory was seen in the centuries later as a very important moment in the history of the Christian-Muslim conflict. But at your times there was a different look at that battle, right?
Yeah, that victory was important, but not so much as it became later. That battle was seen as an important moment for the consolidation of power of my grandpa, Karl Martel, in his rulership of the kingdom. There wasn't the sensation of a battle that saved Christian Europe. That place was held by the Battle of Toulouse, that took place some years early, where the army of Count Otto the Great defeated a Muslim army, stopping their invasion. Both me and my grandpa were a little surprised when we saw how people changed their view of that battle. But nonetheless, our opinion on that day hasn't changed much from the past.
And now it's time to talk about the story of that unforgivable Christmas day. Because we all learned that on the 25th of December 800, the Pope crowned you emperor, but most of the general public doesn't know the reasons behind that decision.
Yeah, it's sadly true. Let me explain. It's all Pope's fault. You see, in the year 797 a new emperor took the throne of the Eastern Roman Empire. Irene of Athens. A woman. Before that, she was the regent of the empire on behalf of his son. But then she blinded and later killed him and took definitely the title of Emperor of the Romans. Pope Leo III, without any legitimacy, decided that the throne of Rome could not be occupied by a woman. So, he said that the title of Roman Emperor was vacant and it should get to another one. One like me. I mean, I helped Pope Leo put down a revolt against him in Rome. I also discharged him from some legal accusations against him. He had to crown me emperor. So, without any legitimacy, I was crowned emperor of the Romans. Irene was not very happy when she discovered that a barbarian was crowned emperor of the Romans.
I can imagine how she felt.
Since we are in topic, I want to point out two things that the general public probably ignores. 1. I was crowned as Emperor of the Romans, not Holy Roman Emperor. This type of title will be used only later, starting from the period of Frederick Barbarossa. 2. I want to give a shout-out to a man that deserves more recognition, Otto the Great. He is the real founder of the Holy Roman Empire. I just created the title, but the birth of the state and its bureaucracy were in practice created thanks to Otto and his work. Most of the general public remembers only me as founder of the empire. He deserves the same recognition as me.
Yeah, you are right. He deserves more recognition. If our public agrees, he can be our next guest on the show. The public in studio agrees. Speaking of things that most of the people are not aware of, let's talk about that time you nearly married the Empress Irene.
Oh yeah, that story is an incredible what-if in the European history. In the year 802 I sent an embassy to Constantinople. The Pope and I wanted to bring peace between the West and the East. With a special union. A marriage between me and the Empress of the Eastern Roman Empire, Irene of Athens. Imagine the Eastern Roman Empire and the Frankish Kingdom united in one strong state, with me and Irene as rulers.
That sounds like a crossover episode. And then what happened?
Unfortunately, 1 or 2 days after my ambassadors arrived in the city, Irene was deposed by a conspiracy and the throne was taken by the Minister of Finance, Nikephoros. She was later sent in exile in the Isle of Lesbos. Sometimes I still think what this union would look like.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting what-if. I want to ask you a last question on this topic. Einhard, your biographer, wrote that immediately after the coronation, you were a little frustrated on how the thing was executed. People still struggle to understand if it's true or not.
The truth, as usually, is in the middle. Let's explain to our audience what we are talking about. The Pope told me that he would crown me emperor. I was like, okay, let's do it. But during the coronation Pope Leo took the crown and put it with his hands on my head. This act went unnoticed by most of us, but some days later, I started to think about it. If the Pope crowns the emperor, who has the real power? If a Pope refuses to crown somebody, would this give him a big decisional power? If a Pope can choose who to crown, can also the emperors influence the Pope's election? I was like, maybe I just exaggerating things. Sadly, history proved that my doubts were right. That day we created a circle of power between the papacy and the empire that will shape the Middle Ages.
Sometimes little things can have unpredictable consequences. Now, before the final questions, I want to talk about the end of your rule. Everyone knows that Louis the Pious inherited all the kingdom when you died. But most of them don't know that he wasn't the only one in the race for your kingdom, right?
Thanks for this question, so I can give a little shout-out to my unknown sons, Pepin and Karl. In the Frankish tradition, when a king died, the kingdom was divided among all the male heirs. So in 806, I decided how to divide my kingdom among my 3 sons, Louis, Pepin of Italy and Karl the Younger, as you can see from the image. Sadly, Karl and Pepin died before me, so Louis got all the kingdom.
Now, before we finish, there are 2 off-topic questions for you. 1. What do you think about the fact that every year in the capital of your empire, Aachen, they give an award named after you, for those who distinguished in the service on behalf of European unification and integration? 2. A general idea of what do you think about our modern world?
Well, about the award, I'm just honored and I think it's a recognition for all the work I did during my rulership. About the modern world, there are too many things to say. The fact that in Europe there are atheists, Muslims or those strange Christians called Protestants and Orthodox, is not acceptable for me. We need to convert them to the Catholic faith. I know 2 Spanish kings who were good at it. You can also use those social media to share the true faith, instead of using them for feudal reasons. Another thing. It's sad to see noble families and kings becoming nearly irrelevant today. Instead you let lawyers and merchants rule your nations. Some of them are even women. I mean, it's even more strange that the fact that there's peace in Europe for over 80 years. During my reign, I went on war nearly every year. But at least you created a system where everybody can go school and educate himself.
Well, I think that many people are happy to freely choose which God they want to believe. There are a lot of other things to talk about, but our time is finished. Thanks for accepting our invitation, Carl. I hope you liked this interview.
Yeah, it was an interesting discussion. I hope our public had fun and learned something new.
We hope you enjoyed the show, damsels and knights. Thanks for your time, and we will see in the future for the second episode of the Late History Show. Thanks for watching.